Once upon a time, there was a jungle. It overflowed with lush green plants and was filled with all sorts of animals that crawl, flew, slithered, and swung through the trees. And then one night, a rolling storm arrived, and a bright bolt of lightning grounded itself in the forest's swaying canopy. Soon, raging flames were ripping through the foliage, and great billows of smoke clouded the air. The jungle animals began to flee, the birds flying away with cries of fear, and the deer and tapir trampling through the underbrush. The usually dignified ocelot was running with his tail fluffed out when he caught sight of a hummingbird hovering among the trees. He watched as the tiny creature perched at the edge of a stream to fill its beak with water, and then fly off to defiantly spit the droplets into the smoldering trees. "What are you doing?" the ocelot yelled incredulously. "Are you crazy? You're going to die. You would be wise to flee like the rest of us. Besides, you're never going to be able to put out that fire on your own." The hummingbird paused in her work and turned to the ocelot. "At least I am doing my part," she said, before returning to the stream to refill her beak with water. I first heard this traditional folktale while studying environmental science last semester in Quito, Ecuador. Though it was first told a long time ago, this story's moral is still very relevant to our discussion about how we can make our world more just. The tale of the hummingbird encourages us to see ourselves as part of a larger interconnected community, a community that we have a responsibility to protect and care for, even when no one else seems willing to do their part and when we have a low chance of success. This may sound like a difficult task, but such community-centered thinking is essential in our effort to create social justice. The reason I am standing in front of you tonight is to convince you why the hummingbird ethic is necessary if we are to solve our world's most formidable problems, and how it will give us the trust and hope that we need to make a difference. It is important to recognize that the hummingbird ethic is a community-based philosophy. The story is not about a single heroic individual saving the day, but instead about someone who is simply trying to do their part, but who fails because they do not have community support. Individualism is a core value in the United States. We are raised with the image of Daniel Boone rising against all odds to chart the wilderness. Or take Wonder Woman, a lone superhero performing fantastic feats in order to single-handedly save entire cities. Individualism can be empowering, but when we are faced with issues such as climate change, rampant extinction, and widespread pollution, it becomes very clear that some problems cannot be solved by a single person. In the face of these crises, an individualist mentality is useless. It leaves us feeling overwhelmed and helpless. But in the same challenging situations, the hummingbird ethic shines. When everyone in a community recognizes and fulfills their role to help solve a shared problem, they will almost certainly reach their goal. The main reason that the hummingbird ethic is so effective is because it creates trust. It builds a dynamic in which all members of a community feel that they can count on everybody else to do their part. We lack this trust in our society. Since we do not see our actions as part of a collective effort, we do not trust that we have influence. A clear indicator of this issue is voting rates. According to Census Bureau reports, only 38% of registered voters between the ages of 18 and 34 voted during the most recent presidential election, while a meager 23% voted during the last congressional election. I know people of our generation have opinions on social issues, but so many also feel that in a sea of voters, their voice just doesn't count. We need to stop looking only at our individual impact. No one person's vote is particularly powerful, but combined, our voices gain influence. The summation of our tiny voices determines who will make decisions regarding the most essential aspects of our well-being for 4 long years. Jane Goodall sums up the idea of trust well when she says, "I like to envision the whole world as a jigsaw puzzle. If you look at the whole picture, it is overwhelming and terrifying. But if you work on your little part of the jigsaw and know that all people all over the world are working on their little bits, that's what will give you hope." The way the hummingbird ethic is adopted by a community is not with a bolt of lightning, but more through a spark of hope. In a society that has been locked in an individualist mentality for generations, we cannot expect an army of hummingbirds to spontaneously appear. It takes time to build the trust required for community action, and we must first have hope that others will rally to support us. Such hope is created by lone hummingbirds. These are the people who do what they think is right despite what everyone else is doing. They take that first, risky, terrifying step and speak out even though no one else has shown any sign that they see a problem. They are a light for others wishing to speak out but do not yet have the courage. Just in our Juniata community, I see people willing to be solitary hummingbirds, and I see a kindling of hope. We are a group of individuals who have the courage to speak out in the face of injustice. We see our place in our communities, and we initiate campaigns to help both our next-door neighbors and friends on the other side of the planet. While I am inspired by many of the same great leaders as everyone else, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Jane Goodall, when I am really searching for a source of hope, I find myself looking to you, the people around me who are already starting to make such a meaningful impact on the world. A good example of what is possible with the hummingbird ethic can be found in a small community in South Quito. The members of this neighborhood gather together every weekend to perform a task called minga, or work done by everyone that benefits everyone. They do not receive many government services, so when they realized that rain was washing their roads into their farm fields, they knew they weren't going to get any municipal aid. Instead of balking at the daunting amount of manual labor required to fix the problem, they simply got together and started digging. When I visited this community, men, women, and children were out in the streets working together to build an impressive network of curbs. I found myself not only admiring their feat of construction, but also the way that everyone knew their neighbors, how the entire community acted like a family. If we found the courage to trust each other and take action like this community, what could we accomplish? Our generation may be facing daunting challenges, but they are not impossible ones. To solve them, we must recognize our place in our local communities, the natural community, and the world. We must learn to trust each other, to expect support, and to act together when there is a problem. And finally, we must have the courage to speak out even when we are alone, knowing that we have an imperative to at least try, and that a single voice may be the only spark necessary to kindle the flames of community action. We are well on our way to finding a version of the hummingbird ethic in our society, and I believe in us. I believe in our community and the power we have together to make a difference.